Hi, I'm Anne-Marie Mediwake, and I'm here with Lindsey Deluce. Welcome to CTV Your Morning, the podcast.
It is Pride Month. Happy Pride, everybody. And this week, Nurse Jake joins us to talk about sexual health.
We take a closer look at what's behind Canada's lagging new home sales. Thanks for joining us, and don't forget, you can watch us live, CTV Your Morning, weekdays from 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern and 7 to 10 a.m. Atlantic on CTV CTV News Channel or your CTV News app. In this country, almost half of Indigenous, Black, and racialized women say their job was impacted because of a lack of opportunities or advancement due to societal racial inequality. That's from a 2024 study by Women Act. They are also facing major pay gaps, underrepresentation in senior roles, and concerning rollbacks on DEI initiatives. So what does this mean for how racialized women navigate the corporate world? We'll have that discussion. We've brought in Herline Arora, co-founder of South Asian Women's Collective, Golnaz Golnaragi, who is the founder of Accelerate Her Future, and Chichi Ebo, certified career strategist and founder of Workthrough, joining us today. Good morning to all of you.
Good morning.
I want to start with an overview. You know, in 2021, we saw companies make this concerted effort when it comes to EDI, equity, diversity, and inclusion. We saw more money being put behind those promises, but right now we're seeing this targeted reduction towards those initiatives. Could you share where we stand as of 2025, like right now in May, and what the world currently looks like for racialized women? Golnaz, do you want to take this one?
Sure.
Yeah.
I would say that the current landscape is deeply inequitable for Indigenous women, Black women, racialized women. We are seeing a severe underrepresentation in leadership roles and senior roles, and that's problematic. And from the numbers that we're seeing, that representation could actually trend down and not up, which is a problem. And at a micro level, I would say what I'm seeing is that some organizations, some corporate organizations, are going all in. They're continuing with their efforts. Others are quietly doing the work, and some are actually stepping back, which can have even more dire impact on racialized women.
In preparation for this, I did a little bit of digging into what some corporations are doing, and if they're not rolling it back, then they're taking words like women and racialized out of those initiatives. All three of you are nodding. What's the danger in that?
Well, I'm seeing workforce studies across, I would say, government sectors or public sector, nonprofit sector, and as well as corporate, that white women in particular have benefited from EDI programs and in comparison to racialized women, but they're also achieving more opportunities in career advancement and leadership. And so I would say the harm of rolling back on any programs or diversity initiatives that support workplace policies of inclusion and equity and fair treatment create challenges of actually supporting an aging workforce. So how do you attract diverse talent? How do you retain diverse talent? Yeah. And how do you maintain the workforce needs that Canada needs to grow and build its economy?
Golnaz, you have a doctorate in business administration. So how does the mainstream career development model exclude the needs and experiences of racialized women? This is an important conversation because when a company just looks at women and they don't look at the racialized piece of it, there is a lot of disparity when you do the comparison between advancement of white women and racialized women.
Absolutely. So we are launching a study. We actually asked Indigenous, Black, and racialized women about this very issue, about their career development. And three things. There's lots that came out. I'll focus on three. The first is that there's a fundamental lack of understanding of the needs and lived experiences of racialized Black women, Indigenous women. And so how do you design career development that really targets the barriers that they may be experiencing? Number two, one-size-fits-all program that are for all people or for women, as Herline has talked to, tend to benefit white women. They don't go far enough. That's problematic. And third, the role of people leaders in that conversation, their direct managers, is essential. And so they can either make or break career development if they're not really in tune with who they're working with and their needs.
And I would challenge corporations, go to one of your lunch and learns that are held specifically for women and look at the faces who are in the room and then compare to the positions they have in your company. It's a fast and easy way to realize if you maybe have a problem or something to look into.
100%.
Herline, StatsCan says South Asians are the largest racialized group that live in this country, 2.6 million of them living here as of 2021. What barriers exist, not just from a structural level, but from a cultural and heritage level as well, and how does that impact young women?
Yeah, so I would say in terms of the context of what we've been doing at South Asian Women's Collective, we've been diving into a 2-year community-based research project to better look at and understand the career development and employment needs of young South Asian women, ages 18 to 30 across the GTA, knowing that there's such a limited data and research and evidence on South Asian women and their workforce, which is surprising since it is the largest racialized population. But with our findings and with survey responses, with over 200 survey responses and learning circles with 57 participants, we kept hearing the intersections between culture, gender, and race impacting and influencing education and employment pathways. And one of the major findings through our research was the influence around family and parental relationships with navigating career pathways as well too. And so with young South Asian women, many shared that there is, family is my biggest champion, my biggest support system in thinking about career and employment goals and supporting me, but also the major friction and tension with families' expectations on certain sectors to go into. So we've all heard this: a doctor, lawyer, engineer, those traditional sectors that are very secure and stable in terms of pathways.
That's the trifecta for any South Asian family.
Yeah, and it relates to a lot of actually racialized immigrant families, but then also the other things were the expectations to care for family needs at home, and that's always a gendered expectation on young women, family caregiving with younger siblings or elders in the family household, or even staying close to home to pursue education and training because we want to still keep an eye on you. And so there's a few things there that need to be further analyzed, but one thing I do want to highlight is that immigrant parents' experiences coming into the Canadian workforce and how they were treated with their skills, their assets, their credentials does impact and influence how they put pressures on their children's success. So what they, if they were de-skilled, devalued, and not recognized and their career identity was challenged, then it puts extra pressures and values around success and what that means for their children. And so there is this friction and tension right now on children and family parental relationships.
That's a really interesting point. Chi-Chi, I want to bring this into this conversation. Looking towards the future, how can companies and organizations start putting some action behind their promises of not only EDI, but just as growing their company overall to act with equity at the forefront rather than just talk about it or do head counts, but not necessarily understand who's there in their company?
Yeah, well, promises can only mean so much, but what about the intent and structure behind those promises? That's very important. And in my organization, we encourage workplaces to start to do an assessment early on and figure out where are you starting, how are you falling short? So we have a career development maturity assessment that allows organizations to figure out this is where we're doing well, this is where we're falling short for racialized employees. And once you're able to pinpoint, you can then prioritize. And if you're prioritizing effectively, that means you're looping in the lived experiences of everyone who are racialized, Black women, Indigenous, and you're looping in those lived experiences to design those programs. So, for example, we have a career development and mentorship coaching program called Compass, and it was designed by Black folks, and it was integrated into an organization by partnering with a Black employee resource group. So for one, that ensures that it is rooted in the lived experiences, and it's also backed by tangible, practical frameworks. And then another thing organizations can do to put equity first is definitely train their leaders, right? Leaders play such a huge role in how folks and racialized women can move forward in the workplace, right? Textio releases every year a report on bias and feedback, and Black women are 9 times more likely to get unactionable feedback than white men. So if they're getting unactionable feedback and feedback that focuses more on their personality, using words like passionate, it diminishes their capabilities, their strengths, and they're not sure how they can actually move forward if there's no clear action for them to improve. So training leaders on more of a career-first leadership, I like to call it, how to have that career coach mindset, how to bring the best out of people so we can see that advancement, see those promotions, but ultimately also see that racialized folks and Black women can also get access to upskilling opportunities, opportunities to speak, opportunities to get visibility to be in front of decision makers, and also opportunities to broaden their network too as well.
Ladies, I want to thank you all for being here today. Really important conversation, great points to bring up. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Guys, have you ever tried something once and you're like, ugh, I'm never doing this ever again?
Oh, good question.
Probably.
Yeah. Okay, think about what that's going to be for you while you watch this couple who walks us through some of the things that they are very happy to avoid.
Things we're glad we never have to do.
I'm so glad that I never have to learn how to play euchre.
I'm so glad I never have to go spelunking.
Spelunking.
It's like when you go into the cave and you're like in the tight quarters.
I'm so glad that I never have to subject myself to the anxiety of an escape room. I'll never go.
I'm so glad I never have to sing the national anthem at the Super Bowl. I swear I would mess up the lyrics.
I'm so glad that I never have to wear jeans on an airplane.
I am so glad that Gordon Ramsay will never judge my cooking, ever.
I'm so glad that I never have to willingly put myself into a metal cage, go into the deep sea, and drop into the ocean with sharks. Never gonna do that.
I'm so glad I never have to back up a semi-truck in a high-pressure situation.
I'm so glad that I never have to run a 5K on Thanksgiving. I was worried about that when I married you.
You were?
Yeah, if you were potentially like a 5K family.
I'm glad I never have to compete in a national spelling bee.
Spell onomatopoeia.
What?
Spell on it. Okay, so whether it's running a marathon, like after Thanksgiving meal, parallel parking during rush hour, or trying to avoid escape room at all costs, what are some of the things that you are glad that you never have to do?
I'm not the right person to start this conversation because most of the things they were saying, I was like, but that sounds fun, and I would do that. And like, escape rooms are really fun.
They are fun.
They are so fun. And I didn't think I was going to be an escape room kind of person. And then I went and I realized I'm incredibly competitive and I yelled the whole time.
I'm sorry, you only then realized you're incredibly competitive?
Well,
I could have given you a heads up on that
You
one.
should have checked in with us sooner.
This is true.
No, I think I would do a lot of the things they were saying. Parallel parking during rush hour, I wouldn't want to do that. Or finding my way through Toronto traffic with the way Toronto people drive. I'm so sorry, Lindsay. But the way that people drive here
What do you mean,
stresses
me?
me out. Because you live in Toronto.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the drivers suck.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. But beyond that, I can't think of anything like number one that I'm like, I would never want to do that because I feel like the story I tell myself is worse than the actual experience. Once you do it, you're like, oh, it wasn't that bad.
No, I'm so glad I never have to go bungee jumping. I want to do a lot of other things, but I am not doing that.
Really?
No. It's not, no.
Would you jump out of a plane?
I've done it.
Oh, jumped out of a plane?
Yeah.
Oh, I would too.
yeah, it's just that seems
What is
safer
it
to
about
me.
the cord that freaks you out more than just the free fall with a parachute?
I don't trust the cord.
Yeah, I
don't
get that.
And then the ground is right there. I have more time to save myself.
Yeah.
Than I would.
Because
You don't know if it's not gonna work until it's not working.
Okay,
It's a lot of faith to put in a giant elastic band.
Agreed. Yeah. But you also realize that we have a lot more stories about things going wrong with planes in the news than we do about bungee jumpers going wrong.
I will
not
say
about
that
skydiving.
I will say that when I went up with Drew and this was when we first started dating, and I told my parents about it after, my dad, who's a pilot, was like, "Why would you jump out of like a plane that was flying really well?" I was like, "I don't understand." I was like, "Why would you leave the plane?"
He would never do that.
No, he would do everything. He does everything.
Yeah.
He literally does everything. Like we went to Club Med. I remember this is one of my favorite memories of my dad. Club Med as a kid, and all of a sudden he was in the circus show. What? He was in a leotard swinging on.
The apple falls
Apple
so
and
far
tree.
from the tree.
He does
Also,
everything.
Viv, third generation.
I know, it's true.
Oh my God. What about you? What would you not do?
Guys, what I don't do is parallel park. I have literally gotten out of the car and switched seats with Daryl so that he will parallel
Really?
park the car.
In the middle of the road?
Yes.
Anne-Marie.
I don't like it. It stresses me out. I can't do it
Yeah.
well. I get sweaty and then it gets worse. Plus he's sitting there going, if you just, so I just
You know what?
circumvent all of that.
Can I say thank you? There's nothing more frustrating than watching somebody who sucks at parallel parking. Parallel park.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating.
Annoying for everybody. So
it
I
does.
just circumvent all of it.
I love that you were just like, well, you suck, so I don't want to watch you.
Well, she knows she sucks at it.
Yeah.
She knows she sucks at it, and she's like,
Oh,
you know
until
what?
that, don't even with they have cameras. Listen, I can't do it. I don't care if there's cameras.
Good for you.
Thank you.
It's
Because
all
I don't
about
want to
the-
watch that.
It's about the angles.
It's all about the angles.
It's math.
That's
you
right.
just gotta line it up.
Also, I'm
Don't-
really glad it's not my job to do the trash.
The garbage? Oh, take out the garbage?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
me
I
too.
hear you.
You know what?
Listen.
I'm also really glad it's not my job to take the hair out of the bathtub.
Yeah,
I
The
know.
drain.
it's true.
New home sales are slowing down right across the country. In the Toronto area alone, new home sales dropped 72% in April compared to last year.
Wow, it's a big number. And Dave Wilkes, president and CEO of the Building Industry and Land Development Association, helps break down what's behind the slump in sales.
Listen, your report found that new home sales in the GTA have dropped for the last 7 months in a row. That's worse than the historic lows from back in the 90s, so like 3 decades ago. What's driving the decline?
Yeah, you're exactly right. We've seen historic lows. They're at 85% of the 10-year average. There's two factors that are driving that decline. One is consumer confidence. I mean, it's no surprise to anybody. We're in a period of turmoil, tariffs, et cetera, and people are just sitting on the sidelines waiting to see when that resolves itself.
Yeah.
But it will. At some point in time, it will resolve itself. More fundamentally, we have a cost to build crisis, which is a structural problem where the amount of costs and inputs that go into building a new home or a new condo just are too high for a level for the market to absorb, and that's particularly on the high-rise side.
Yeah, and when we talk about the housing industry, so there's the market side of it, which ebbs and flows, but on the industry side of it, how are they adapting to the slowdown?
Right, so without sales, you're not going to have starts. And so last week we saw a number of layoffs within the housing industry, a key economic driver of the economy across the country, but certainly in large urban centers. And from a consumer point of view, if you're not selling product, you're not being able to build it. And so we look forward, in the GTA, for example, in 2027 and 28, we're going to see even less housing coming on market, and it's going to increase the affordability challenges that we're all facing.
Yeah, well, and then this is the problem, right? We've got this desire and this need to build. We've got the cost that it's too expensive, and there in the middle lies where the real tension point is. So Prime Minister Mark Carney made housing as a central point of his campaign. You saw a lot of this. It included a pledge to double the rate of home building to 500,000 homes per year within a decade. So how does that square with what you were just outlining is the cost of building?
Right, so there's a number of things that we believe the Prime Minister and the provincial premiers can do. One in particular is take a look at GST, PST, or combined HST. It was first introduced on new homes in 1991, and at that time, 95% of the homes that were built didn't pay, at the time, GST. And there was a pledge that rate, that 450,000 below which above which, you don't pay GST, will be updated every 2 years. That hasn't happened.
Of course not.
That's a key factor, and there's been a lot of conversation on it, which we are welcome to focus, but we need that needs to move quickly.
Well, quickly is a key word because your organization is warning it's going to take years before buyers feel the shock of what's actually happening in the housing market. First of all, how will they feel that? Where are they going to notice it?
There's just not going to be housing delivered. New home sales, as I indicated, we're going to see a shortage of deliveries in 2027 and 28. If you simply updated the GST, if you took it to $1 million threshold, which is what we would suggest that it would be based on inflation over the last 34 years, allowed it to apply to all new homes and those homes that are substantially renovated, that would be a $106,000 saving on a new home. We really believe that would address the cost to build that we've talked about and get the industry back working and delivering homes for Canadians that want to live in our large urban centers and elsewhere.
So the GST is the big one. It's sort of the first move.
GST, PST, we welcomed Premier Ford in Ontario, came forward and said that they would move if the federal government did. So we think there's a tremendous momentum here. We got to get it right, though. Yeah. It's got to apply to all new home purchasers and those substantially renovating homes, and it's got to be at a threshold that makes sense, and we're suggesting the first $1 million.
Dave, are you hopeful? Because, we've got these targets of what to build, but we've got the cost that it's expensive. You've got a cautious market of people saying, I don't know if I want to put the money in. And we also have on the industry side, you mentioned job losses. Listen, this is supposed to be one of those make work projects for here in Canada. It provides a lot of jobs.
It's a huge economic driver of our economies, absolutely, and housing is a central part of our society and the communities that we build. I am hopeful because we've seen focus like we haven't seen. I really encourage governments to move on that GST and PST. It would be a direct improvement to the pocketbook of those that looking to purchase a home of $106,000, to repeat my number. That's huge, and we believe that would be a great step in the right direction. We've also seen at the provincial and municipal level, governments taking a look at the cost that they put on new housing and how they can reduce it. So change has to happen, and I'm hopeful that it will.
This is Your Morning, the podcast, where we bring you some of the best conversations from our show every week. And we'd love for you to start your morning with us. So you can tune in live weekdays 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern, 7 to 10 a.m. Atlantic on CTV CTV News Channel, or on the CTV News app.
We are officially into June. It is Pride Month. Happy Pride. And this morning we are talking sexual health, preventative care, and best practices, especially for 2S LGBTQ plus communities. To help us do that, Nurse Jake is here. Happy Pride.
Hi, thank you. Happy
Let's see your
Pride.
shoes.
Yeah.
Show me your shoes. And your socks.
They're my Pride shoes.
Oh,
yeah.
they're so great. Okay, so let's talk about this because now that Pride Month has officially started, we're into June. What do Canadians need to do to stay safe and healthy?
Yeah, so as a registered nurse, Pride Month for me just means more than visibility. It's also about our community safety, our access to healthcare, and just thriving in our bodies. And like you said, for many 2S LGBTQI plus folks, they face a lot of stigma and judgment when it comes to their health and their sexual health. And so data has shown even recently that HIV testing rates in some queer groups and for trans communities is low. And that's likely because they face that stigma.
And is it an access issue?
Yeah, so we are seeing some progress, right? So we have organizations like Casey House that really target people living with HIV or who are at risk for HIV. And then municipalities and the province, for example, Toronto Public Health has partnered with Ontario Health. They have a program called Shiloh, which is the Sexual Health Info Line Ontario, where people can access resources. But where we're seeing gaps is in rural areas in terms of education of Canadians and healthcare professionals, and also linking Canadians with a healthcare professional that they can trust, because a lot of people have faced that judgment and they've lost trust in going to see their healthcare provider.
That's so key, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about your own experience growing up, that trust factor is so huge, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and that's why Pride Month is so important, because we not only want to talk about illness prevention, but we want to empower our community and healthcare professionals to know about their bodies, about the latest testing and treatments, and also just having that confidence to have those conversations.
So true.
Yeah.
Do you want to play a little true and false?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. So we're going to look at I love that. This is a great way to do it. So we're going to play a little true and false when it comes to sexual health. So we are going to start with PrEP, P-R-E-P.
Yeah.
True or false? PrEP stands for pre-exposure prophylaxis.
Yeah, you got it.
Did
True.
I nail it?
Yeah.
Prophylaxis, okay.
True. So
True.
PrEP is a medication that you can take daily to help prevent you acquiring new HIV infection. And so this is similar to, say, taking birth control. It's prophylaxis, so it's a medication you take preemptively to prevent illness.
Okay, true or false? Nurse Jake, PrEP is only for gay men. I'm going to guess this is false.
Yes, false. Okay. Yeah. So a lot of the marketing and advertising you see on social media and out there, it is targeted towards gay men and bi men and trans men. But this medication is for anyone who's at risk. So it's about risk and not about your gender or your sexual identity. And so anyone can take it, including cisgender straight women.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
True or false? PEP.
Yep.
PEP stands for post-exposure prophylaxis.
True. Yeah. And so this is actually something that's really new in the community and is becoming more and more used by folks. So it's a medication you take afterwards, post-exposure prophylaxis. An example is DoxyPEP, which is an antibiotic, doxycycline, and it helps prevent against bacterial STIs, so gonorrhea, chlamydia, and syphilis. And so you can take this medication within 72 hours of a high-risk exposure to help prevent. It's not 100%, but the data shows that it is helping.
Okay,
Yeah.
true or false? You only need to get tested for sexually transmitted infections if you have symptoms.
False. False. Many STIs go without having symptoms. So what we say to people is if you have multiple sexual partners or if you're in an open relationship, that you're getting tested regularly. You have to think about your STI screening as part of your regular self-care. So you should be going every 3 to 6 months.
And where do you do that?
You can go to your family doctor, nurse practitioner, if you're attached, so please find one. If you can't, there's a lot of open access clinics. There's hassle-free in Toronto, throughout provinces there are a lot, and you can also go to walk-in clinics.
Fewer summer jobs are up for grabs this year, especially for young people.
Yeah, according to Indeed, job postings with summer in the title are down 22% from last year.
So what is going on, and what does this mean for young workers? Senior economist Brendan Bernard explains.
Okay, first of all, why are we seeing fewer summer job postings for young people?
I think this is really wrapped up in a trend we're seeing across the economy. Since the pandemic, coming out of that, it was a real job seekers market. In 2022, employers across the sectors, regions were looking to hire. But we've seen a pullback in hiring appetite since, and that's continued into this year, particularly for summer job postings.
You know, I hear about this anecdotally, sort of my kids and their friends are in this age category, that it's hard to find summer jobs. Typically, it's, service, working for the city, summer camps, things like that. Are there any areas that are still looking to hire young people?
I'd say it's pretty soft across the board. We see summer seasonal job postings in a range of different areas: recreation, summer camps, the quintessential summer job, but also in customer service and in manual labor type roles. it's pretty soft across the board. And this is a trend that is kind of difficult right now for the youth employment situation, because even heading into this summer, the Canadian youth job market has been weakening pretty steadily over the past 2 years. And so we need a turnaround in the economy to get things going again. But these coming summer months, with more students off looking for work, it doesn't look like there's going to be a turnaround anytime soon.
Brendan, is it because there's less jobs available, or those jobs are going to older people, maybe people with more experience?
There's going to be a bit of both, I think. So one factor is just that there are fewer jobs available. We see on Indeed summer job postings down 22% from a year ago, and it taken over the past 2 years. That decline is pretty similar to the dip in job postings we've seen overall across the economy. And so what happens, sort of like you said, is kind of a cascading effect, where you might have people who in a stronger job market would have moved on from a seasonal role to a more career track job. And that opens up opportunities for new young people entering the labor force. And there's a bit of a traffic jam that's built up now, where employers aren't looking to hire as much, and people aren't jumping from opportunity to opportunity, and then new entrants to the labor market are finding it tougher to get their first foothold in the door.
Okay, that's where I want to pick up our conversation. So for young people who are competing for these jobs this summer, what's some good advice to make sure that they stand out and they're one of the ones to get the few positions available?
Yeah, well, a down summer job market doesn't mean no summer job market. So I think that's the first thing to realize, that it might be tougher for any individual job seeker to find roles, but there's still going to be thousands of new jobs started this summer. So go out and look. But in terms of the job search process, I think first step starts with looking inward. What's the goal for this job search, and what kind of job it both fits the person's interests and skills? What are you good at? And then from there, doing the research, using job search websites like Indeed, but also tapping into networks, family, friends, coworkers, colleagues, classmates. Maybe for an inside track and opportunity, but also just for advice. Every area of the economy is unique, and kind of unique insight from on the ground on how to get into an industry or what to think about is going to be useful. And if the job search isn't going well, then making the best of a bad situation, what are some other ways of keeping productive during the summer months, whether it's volunteering or training, picking up new skills, both to help with the career search today, but also thinking about building up skills over the long term.
Sounds weird to say, but this morning the Bay is closed. So now the question is, what happens to all that empty retail space?
You come into these stores to experience choice. And so I'm sad about that, but I also am excited about what the future of this particular physical place will be.
So with 96 Hudson's Bay leases up for grabs, experts say an evolving retail landscape is going to make it difficult for landlords to quickly find a replacement. For more on what could happen to those former Bay stores, we're joined this morning by retail expert Bruce Linder. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on the program.
As a reminder to everybody, the last Canadian Target and the Sears stores, those closed back in 2015, 2018. Yet we know some of that retail space is still sitting empty. What will the challenges ahead be for spaces like Hudson's Bay and those gaps that they leave in large retail spaces?
Yeah, it's going to be a massive challenge. I mean, every time a big box store closes, it leaves behind sort of that legacy footprint. And to your point, not all of it is filled. So you've already got malls out there where they're struggling to fill the old Targets and Sears. But the good news with the Hudson's Bay story is it sounds like about 28 of the leases or 28 of the spots are going to be used by a billionaire from the West Coast named Ruby Liu, who's going to open up some form of department store. And there's going to be more details on that. The other locations, I believe Canadian Tire and a number of other folks have bid on some of them. So you might see existing retailers sort of pop up in some of the space. But for the leases that aren't really spoken for, it's going to be all over the map, depending on the location of the facility. Some could turn into car dealerships. Some could turn into condominiums, office space, pickleball courts, gyms, all over the map.
Is that maybe what what comes to mind when we talk about, Ruby Liu's plan for those 28 Hudson's Bay leases? She talked about making it a new modern department store. Is that some of the idea?
Yeah, that's the idea. I mean, we don't have all the details yet. Retail Insider interviewed her a few weeks ago, and she talked about creating, almost feels like a mall within a mall, where it's a combination, a fusion of cultural diversity, age diversity, so you're going to have all kinds of age groups there, food, products, and entertainment. So it sounds pretty interesting. I mean, if you look at some of the malls, she owns 3 malls on the West Coast, and they're pretty active in terms of always having events and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see sort of what she does. Does she create a prototype first, before she rolls out another 27, or how that's going to work? Everyone's pretty excited about that.
In a lot of communities, mine included, the Hudson's Bay took up sort of that chunk at the end of the mall, right? That's going to sit empty. But for several cities, and Vancouver and Toronto in particular, you've got these legacy buildings that are historic. The architecture is beautiful. How would that dictate? And they're multi-level, right? They're at least 3 floors. So how would that dictate what could go in that space?
Yeah, I mean, those are absolutely gorgeous buildings. Yeah, it's really going to be up to what happens with the landlords. We don't know what locations Ruby Liu is going to take, but for the other locations, you could put office buildings in there. You could make some really interesting condominiums in some of those old legacy buildings. That would be sort of a selling feature for buyers. So, we're going to have to wait and see what happens here.
Bruce, it's day one of the Bay being officially closed. What do you think about when you reflect on that?
I feel really sad. I mean, I was out yesterday trying to get into a couple of bays, and I was really sad. And you're right. I mean, think about the last time that we hadn't had a bay was 1670. Wow. The world's changed a lot since 1670. So it just feels really weird. It's eerie. It's surreal. I feel for the employees. I feel for the vendors. And I feel like we've lost something.
0 to 60 Driving Academy is a hilarious new comedy that's based on some real-life lessons.
So funny. So this is Atlantic Canada's first Black-led family sitcom. The show is inspired by the experiences of its co-creator, Steve Lawrence, who was a driving instructor at one point.
We probably have some good stories. Also with a creator credit is Halifax's Alexandra McLean, a stunt performer and an actor who stars as Steve's daughter. Here's our conversation with the 2 stars.
Honestly, this is such a great concept for a show. Steve, I've got to ask you, you are a co-creator of the show. You were a driving instructor in real life at some point. What was the wildest experience you had with a student?
The wildest.
Were you ever scared in the car?
At first, for the first 5-10 years, I was scared at first, but we have a brake on my side, so it was okay. As long as I got a brake, it's not like the parents when they're trying to look for a brake, I have one.
You have a brake.
So that ain't happening. Done.
Yeah. Did you use a lot?
A few times.
A few times?
Some people drive on the wrong side of the road and things. It happens.
Wait, they drive on the wrong side of the road?
Because some people come from other countries, as you know.
Oh, I see.
From
Okay,
England
yes.
somewhere, and they get in the car, and a
yeah.
few weird experiences, for sure.
Yeah, using that brake.
Girl, yep.
Alexander, you are a co-creator, you're co-writer, actor, producer on this show. You're from Halifax, correct? Yeah. And Steve, you're from Dartmouth?
Yeah, I live in Dartmouth, yeah.
Okay, and so how did you 2 meet?
Well,
tell the story, girl.
My dad actually knew Steve when Steve was younger, but we didn't really meet until a few years ago on another one of Jonathan Torrance's shows. And we still didn't really talk about how my dad knew him until we were in the writer's room for this show. Yeah.
That was really strange.
And?
It was strange.
What's the story?
Strange. First thing I heard was, do I call you Steve or Stevie? And I went, what? Who's this kid? She knows something. Okay, and then but just before that, Jonathan said to me, we got this new young writer coming up. Alex, she's really good, Steve. We should bring her on. I went, okay, sure. And then she told me, Steve or Steve, and I went, oh, Steve, and then, well, you know my father. Oh.
Oh.
Oh, was really shocked to my system, but yes, her father and I were friends, and yes.
Friends from back in the day?
Yeah, back when we were teenagers, yeah.
Isn't that funny? Because when you say you called him Stevie, if somebody calls me my last name Deluce, I know exactly what era of my life.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I know the era of life, and then I gotta piece it together.
Me.
Yeah, that's a high school thing. And then there are other nicknames too. If they whip out, I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah, you really know me.
Yeah, you really, which I could not say on air.
Exactly.
Do you have any nicknames for you?
I mean, my dad used to call me Chuck. I don't know where that came
from.
Yeah.
Come on, Chuck.
Yeah, so strange.
That's really funny. And he's never explained it?
No.
Great boast.
He never did.
The greatest secret of all time. Let's talk about the premise of the show, because yes, I mentioned driving school, but it's also so lovely, the relationship between father and daughter on this show. I want to play our viewers a little clip. Here we go.
Fine. I'll conduct the road test for you.
You
Really?
and the road test don't really get along together.
I think the word you were looking for was thanks.
I know you didn't hang up on me. You know what? Oh boy, if I would hung up my father, he would have done slapped the taste off my mouth.
Fine.
It's so true. It's so true.
So true.
I know with my kids now, like my
So
husband and I
true.
are like, I would never have said that to my parents. You know, it's like one
Seriously,
of those things.
exactly.
Your on-screen chemistry is so awesome. How much work do you have to do off-screen to have that work, or is it just, it's a natural thing?
Honestly, like none. We've heard that we're kind of a sitcom. Myself, Stevie, and Devin, who plays my brother, baby Steve.
Yeah.
We've been told we're like a sitcom off the air. Like it's just we're from the community, right? So we all kind of knew each other. We've been
Yeah.
on sets before a little
Exactly,
bit. So
yeah.
it was just like that. We just clicked.
It's so great.
Just have some fun. Yeah, just like she said, we just clicked. Had a bunch of fun off screen and on screen. We just stupid.
Yeah, but it's the kind of stupid fun you like, right?
Exactly.
And it's great to watch too.
It's all natural, you know, nobody's
Yeah.
forcing anything.
Yeah.
We have a lot of fun. Everybody a lot of respect outside and on set. So
And that's the key. It's respecting each other, you know, both professionally and personally. It's great to have you both on. Congratulations on the show.
Thank
you very much.
0 to 60 Driving Academy is now streaming on Bell 5, TV 1. We are so glad you joined us today. For more great conversations, don't forget to download or hit subscribe to Your Morning, the podcast on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
And of course, we would love for you to join us live weekday mornings on CTV, CTV News Channel, or on your CTV News app. We'll see you in the morning.